This is your spiritual game plan, and I'm your host, Sherry Fletcher. Change. It happens to all of us. You've invested your time and energy into an important role, sometimes for years. Then suddenly it's time for you to move on. Maybe you've worked hard on a dream, and now your path is taking a new turn, but the dream isn't going with you. Perhaps you've raised your kids, and now they've moved on, but your empty nest is filled with parent care. Maybe you're in the middle of diaper changes and laundry piles. If you find yourself asking questions like, where do I fit in anymore? Am I even relevant? How do I find my purpose now? You are in the right place. This is the show for women in a season of transition. I believe that while your roles in life will change, your purpose is eternal. I'm here to help you understand just how intentionally you were made by a creator with a game plan. Through interviews and inspirational guests, we'll discover ways to help you unlock the purpose God placed in you, develop a game plan for your life's calling, and embrace the intentional masterpiece you were created to be. Today, I will be talking with social media expert Tony Kubo. Tonya believes that with great power comes great responsibility, and she has made a career out of the responsible use of online spaces to create community. Tonya helps Christian businesses and communicators manage their online presence. But today, we're going to be talking mom to mom about how we navigate our worth as mothers in the very field that she knows so well, social media. I hope you are encouraged by my conversation with Tonya as we hope to raise your grade from Mom Zero to Mom Hero. Happy New Year, Tonya. Thanks for joining me today. How are you?
I am well. Happy New Year.
Thank you. We are in season 2 of your Spiritual Game Plan podcast, and I am so honored to have you as a guest. And, I first met you, it's been 2 years, almost 2 years,
Oh
a little over 2 years ago.
It's been over 2 years.
Yeah. I went to Leverage at Speakers Conference, and I friends with Sherry Gregory, and so I was able to go into the inner sanctum of Kathi Lipp's kitchen.
I was like, otherwise known as Kathy's Kitchen.
Kathy's Kitchen. And there you were organizing all things about the conference. And I had just met you, and I asked how I could help you. And you made like a mildly snarky little comment. And I'm like, we are friends. This girl's awesome.
It takes a rare person to appreciate the snark.
It was awesome. And since then, I've been able to work with you as I've interned for Kathi, and I continue to work with you as my social media coach. But my favorite title for you is my friend.
Oh, me too. That's the best.
It is. So we are in 2021, and I am guessing that last year's resolution and last year's goal calendars did not quite turn out the way we thought they were going to.
A little bit different.
I would love it if you would tell my listeners a little bit about yourself and your family, and how did COVID affect your ministry, your career, maybe even some of the goals you've set for this year?
Oh, that's a lot to cover. Okay. Luckily, you know me, right? I'm like task oriented. So I'm like, okay, we can just bang this out real quick. So I am married mom of 2. I live in California, and my husband is a public school teacher. My daughters, in light of everything that happened in 2020, are now homeschooled, which is not something that we ever thought we did. We were not the parents who were like, we're going to have children, we're going to homeschool them, it's going to be awesome. We were like, we are a dual income household who will rely heavily on public school. But 2020 changed that, so we homeschool, I guess right now would be a 5th grader and a 1st grader. And I still work as much as I did before. The work just looks a little bit different. So I'm so glad that you referenced just pandemic and all the things in 2020, because, for some people, 2020 has been so professionally devastating. For me, working in the online space, it's been completely the opposite. But, success can be a double-edged sword. So for us, it has been amazing to have so many people interested in the work I do, right? People have always known about online community, but I think it was dismissed a lot as less than a real life relationship. And with people being unable to leave their houses for so long, people have really embraced online community, understood the importance. So, my phone has rung off the hook, so to speak. But at the same time, I don't have the availability that I had before, because now I have 2 little girls at home. And for most of the year, we had, 4 people having to do competing Zoom appointments at any given time. So I've had to shift my work and really focus on priorities. Like, how do I make the biggest impact in the shortest amount of time? And I think that's probably been the most powerful lesson of the time.
Yeah, I think a lot of us have learned flexibility and redirection and able to just, be a little bit more flexible with what we're actually doing and our expectations. So, and it's been good in that way. So I like to have fun, a couple fun questions before we get in there and dig in. And I think if someone was watching you and all you do, and even in this Zoom, your expressions and your enthusiasm, they would definitely say, yes, she is an extrovert. And I think part of you, is an extrovert. But what about the other side?
Yeah, well, it's funny, is you were the person who taught me the term ambivert.
Oh.
And I am, it's like I'm an Enneagram, I think wing 4, which I don't know a whole lot about the Enneagram, but apparently that describes me. And so, yes, I'm very animated. I'm very expressive, which means I take the most amazingly awful pictures that you can imagine, because you always catch the wrong part of my expression. But I've never been lonely. I've never been bored. I enjoy my time to myself. And I didn't realize how much I enjoyed that until I started teaching at writers' retreats. Because in a retreat experience, right, there's people everywhere all the time. And I would find myself staying, getting up earlier than everybody else and just enjoying the quiet. So what I've realized is I love peopling. People are amazing, but I also love that time to myself to unplug and be away. So I think that makes me more introverted than people would assume.
Yeah. And I love the term ambivert, because it is. I have moments where people know me. I'm an Enneagram 7. Love a good party, and if there isn't one, I'll organize it. But then after a while,
I'll go to your party.
After a while, I will go into the kitchen and start doing dishes as a way to just kind of regroup and pull in and get a little bit time to myself, and then go back into the party. So one question I ask every guest is, looking back in your life, how far back can you see the very purpose you are living out today in who you have always been?
Oh, that's a great question. So I would say 6th grade. Do I just say that, or do you want me to expand?
I want to expand.
I expand. Okay.
Don't leave us hanging.
I was 6th grade.
6th grade, okay.
So, my passion is online community. Which obviously when I was in the, maybe not obviously, maybe everybody thinks I'm way younger than I really am, but word online was not even a word when, maybe they used it in car manufacturing plants when I was in the 6th grade, but, internet did not exist when I was in the 6th grade, but community and inclusion was very important to me. And so I've recently shared this story, that I can remember, I was not a popular kid. And so every friend I had was a hard-won friend. I worked really hard to develop relationships. I invested heavily in my relationships. And a new girl came to school, and she was painfully shy, like she would start to cry if the teacher called on her in class. And there was just something about her that I was just very drawn to her. And I wanted to be her friend. And I didn't know if she wanted to be my friend, but I wanted to be her friend. And so I worked really hard to include her. But it became very clear very quickly that the friends that I had worked, this little friend group of 4 or 5 girls, they were not interested in being her friend. They were not interested in how different she was. She dressed differently, she acted differently, all that stuff. And so I had to choose between them and between her. And so looking back, I realized that even in the 6th grade, so I was like 11 years old, I realized that quality relationships were much more important and much more valuable than quantity relationships. And so you fast forward now 40-ish years ago, or 40-ish years forward, right? 30-ish years forward. And that is the basis of all I do online, right? When I talk to people about online communities, whether it's a Facebook group or a membership group, I'm talking all about quality relationships, engaging with people as a real live human in an authentic way. And it's funny to me that I had that inkling at 11.
Yeah.
But here we are.
But here you are. Well, when you were created, God had plans for you that he made long ago. And so they've always been there. It's just fun to look back and see them.
Right. And see how they emerge.
Exactly. So this is your first time on my podcast, but this is our second time together because back in 2020, you and I did a Facebook Live together, and the links to that are in the show notes. But we talked about the career mom and the stay-at-home mom.
Yes.
And now you're both. Because it's such a, it is an underlying topic, even today. I mean, it just seems like, it feels like sometimes it's we're the moms against the moms, or, you know, and so we had a great discussion about that. And I think we found out that no matter, as we were talking, we found out that no matter what category women fall into, the common belief among all women is that we just are not enough. And if you're a working mom, you feel like you're not good enough parent. And if you're a stay-at-home mom, then you feel like you're not doing enough to provide, or as I was referred to as just a stay-at-home mom, because that word.
Oh yeah, we like that. We like that. We like to be diminished in that way, don't we? You're just.
Yes, which means nothing more than sometimes.
Right.
And, you know, the belief that we are not enough is one that I think we all believe throughout our life, no matter where we work, inside or outside the home. What did you take away from that discussion we had back in May?
Well, aside from the fact that I'm like chasing squirrels, because I feel like I went on a ton of rabbit trails, but you know, the main thing that I took away from that conversation is that as much as we will always compare, right? Like that internal comparison battle is a big one. We're the ones who get to opt out of the game. Like, we don't have to play that game. Okay, I don't have to do the battle between who's more valuable, me or you, right? Like, if you wanted to play that battle, Sherry, I could just let you. Okay, fine. I'm going to take, you know, I don't have to participate. And I think sometimes we forget that we don't have to participate. We have a choice.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's it right there. Thank you. Awesome. You know, we mentioned earlier today before we hit record, it's kind of we give ourselves a grade as a parent. And so today we're going to kind of continue that discussion on I like how you said mom hero versus mom zero. Yeah. And we really grade ourselves. And we're going to continue this talk because one of the ways that women and moms can come to a conclusion that they're not enough is by comparing themselves on social media.
Right, which you know is my favorite playground.
Yes, I mentioned that in the recorded intro that you are a social media expert. And you have made a career out of helping Christian authors and speakers optimize our impact on social media, because we all have an impact on social media. So that means that there's obviously good ways to use and to view social media. And, you know, I'm going to go back to Eve. I think the first seed that was planted of not being enough was when Satan told her she wasn't enough, that she needed to be more like God. And he convinces her that if she takes the fruit, she's going to know what God knows. And that opened her eyes up to good and evil. And I think the reason we were never created to know the good and evil is we don't know how to decipher between the two very well. And
Mm,
so sometimes I can see social media as that fruit, but there are good aspects, there are good, and there are bad or evil aspects. So as a social media expert, how do you navigate that?
yeah. So it's funny. Um, so oftentimes I refer to myself as an online communities evangelist, right?
Ooh, I like that.
Um, because my focus is all on sharing the good news. And that's what evangelists do, right? We share the good news. And so I feel like I am someone who focuses on sharing the good news of social media. I teach people how to use it well. And I teach people how to avoid the pitfalls, right? The things that look like you're using it well, but you're really not. And so when I think about that landscape of social media, I think back of a conversation with a friend. So I have a childhood friend of mine who was texting me about a situation. And, and I was just being really honest. I was like, that's not a challenge I've faced. Like, because she kept saying, like, what would you do in this situation? I said, well, honestly, I can tell you, like, what I think I would do, but it's really not fair for me to tell you what to do in that situation because I've never been in it. So I'm just guessing here, right? And I meant that to be encouraging. I meant for her to hear me say, like, I don't want to tell you how to live your life. I don't want to pretend I know more than you know, or that I would live your life any easier or any better than you do. That is not at all how she took it. Not at all. So I said, I've never experienced that. And her response was, well, I guess your life is just as perfect in real life as it is on social media.
Ouch.
And I was like, okay. I had no idea that anybody would look at my social media. And this was back before I was really doing social media professionally. I had no idea that anybody would look at what I was posting on any of the social media channels and assume I was leading a charmed life. Right? I was just trying to be an encourager. Like, who wants to hear about my bad day? Who wants to know that, I spent like 2 hours like dealing with a toddler meltdown? Like, that's not fun. If you're living that life, do you really want to watch other people live that life? Here's a newsflash. Yes, you do. You really do. Because when we're showing just the perfect home cooked from scratch meal that we've created and never showing like the desperation drive-through dash, right? Where then people do assume that your whole life is Pinterest recipes, that your whole life is homemade sourdough bread with 100-year-old starter. And the truth is maybe you make sourdough bread once before you kill the 100-year-old starter, and then you feel really guilty because you killed a pet, right? Yeah. Best gift anybody ever gave me when I was gifted 100-year-old sourdough starter was, if you kill it, we have more. And I was like, thank you. You see me. You feel me. So, and I hope that I'm staying on track here, but I think that what I have learned over the years, and keeping in mind that I have worked in social media space professionally since 2007, is we owe it to ourselves and we owe it to people to be as authentic on social media as we are in real life. So I think the problem we run into is, if you've been part of a mom's group or you've been part of a social circle, you would never invite somebody into your home. Okay, I shouldn't say never. Some people do. But most of us would not invite somebody into our home with stuff all over the house. Unless you're me. Because I'm totally the person who's like, you are more than welcome to come over, but I'm not cleaning for you. You're going to have to move a laundry pile off the couch. If that's okay with you, then come on over. And I cannot tell you the number of people who would come over and they'd be like, oh my gosh, you weren't lying when you said that you weren't going to clean. And in my head, I'm like, my poor husband has been cleaning for 2 days because he is not comfortable with the level of raw that I'm comfortable with. But, if that's what you're going to show to people who come to your house, people should have an inkling of that on social media. And it's okay. It's totally okay to let people know that you have a laundry pile on your couch.
Yeah, I love that. I have a blog piece on that called Coffee Among the Chaos, because I did. I had a friend come over and we just pushed things off the
Mm-hmm.
kitchen bar and had coffee, and there was dishes in the sink, and just was actually really good coffee.
Right.
It can be so easy to blame social media and technology for the lack of confidence and the comparison
Mm-hmm.
and, the belief that we aren't good enough. But Jesus reminds us that we are to be in the world and not of the world. And it reminds me of, like, Daniel. He had to navigate Babylon. He didn't just avoid it. He didn't just
Mm-hmm.
stay away from it. He had to navigate it in order to influence within
Mm-hmm.
Babylon. And so, how would you respond to a Christian listener who wants to know, as a Christian mom, they're navigating this not only for themselves, but their children and their grandchildren?
Oh gosh, that's another bit. You ask big questions, Sherry. So I think the first thing that I always say is it's all a choice. People will come to me and they'll say, well, I know, you're not going to like to hear this, but I hate Facebook. And I'm like, well, I didn't create Facebook. Like, I am not personally offended by what you think of the platform and what you don't think of it. So I think the first thing is we all have a choice to participate and not participate. Now, it is hard. It is hard as a parent. I've got a 10-year-old. It's hard as a parent to have a child come to you and tell you all the things their friends are doing, and for you to navigate what that means for you and for your family. But it's okay to have house rules. It's okay to say, no, you're 10, you don't get to be on social media. You're 10, you don't get to have your own computer, your own tablet. And I will be honest, it was a lot easier to say that 2 years ago than it is to say that now, because, most of our kids have had 5 to 12 months of distance learning where, in order to engage in school, they had to be on some kind of device. So those lines blurred in my home just as much as I think they blurred in anybody else's home. I remember sitting across from my husband going, I refuse to buy my 10-year-old her own computer. Now, granted, Chromebooks aren't computers, but it seems the same. And going, and yet I don't know how she's going to do all these things they want her to do without having her own device. I mean, if you're teaching on the household computer and I'm teaching, I'm working on my laptop, like, there's no spare devices. We're not that household. And we agonized for weeks about what did that mean and how were we going to maintain the screen boundaries that we have in our home and all of these things. And here we are, not quite a year later, but we're still having those same conversations. We have those same conversations all the time. So I think the first thing I would say is you have a choice. That's the first thing. The second thing, never stop talking about it. Never stop evaluating and reevaluating what makes sense in your home, because technology always changes, which means you have to be willing to always change. The rules that applied a couple of years ago don't apply now, and they may not even apply in 2 months. And that's hard for us as parents, because we as parents, we want to be fair. And grandparents, right? We want to be fair. You've got 10 grandkids. You want to be the same with the 2-year-old as you were with the 12-year-old when they were 2. But the world is different.
Yeah.
And so I think we have to renegotiate our opinion of fairness. Like, we've talked about that a lot in our home. So the conversation of cell phones comes up a lot. And I know some of the listeners will be like, you have a 10-year-old. Why are you guys talking about cell phones? Well, because when my 10-year-old went to a school when she was in kindergarten and first grade that had a very small population of students living in 2-parent households. And actually not that big of a population of students living with any parent, right? A lot of children who were in the care of other adults. And because of that, there were a lot of first graders with iPhones. It's just the reality. Not because these were privileged kids, but because they lived in environments where they needed to have their own connection with the world or their own connection with an adult. And so I had my, first grader coming home talking about how she was the only kid in her class without a cell phone. And I'm like, I know Susie's mom. Susie does not have a cell phone. But truthfully, when I talked to the teacher, I found out, half the class, half of these 6-year-olds did have cell phones because of whatever circumstances they were living in. And so I had to get really comfortable with being the mom who said no of the only kid who didn't have the ability to text her friends. And because I got comfortable saying no at 6, I'm comfortable saying no at 10. We had those strong boundaries, but now, you know, she's got friends who have their own phones, their own tablets, their own devices. They're doing messenger chat. They're doing all these things. She feels very excluded from peer-to-peer relationships right now. And we're having those conversations too. Are we doing harm or are we doing good here? You know, I do believe that at 10, you know, it is still my job as her mom to protect her from things that she doesn't know enough to know how to control. And so we choose not to have her on Messenger, on any type of messaging platform, if we're not there to observe the interactions, because we need to have the guardrails. So that means she's not on them. And will she be left out of things? Yes. Is she excluded from certain, you know, events? She is. And you know what? It's not going to be the only time in her life. I'm an adult, right? I'm 43 years old. I get excluded from things. It's okay. I've lived about it. Yeah. Like I've lived to tell the tale. I'm all right.
Yeah. I wish my kids, you know, they don't listen to my podcast, but that if they did today, they would realize that there's other moms like me out there. Because I did the exact same thing when they were young. Cell phones were just starting to come out. And social media just barely started coming out, but we, you know, no computers were in the bedrooms. They didn't even get laptops till they graduated from high school, and computer was in the kitchen, and cell phones were on the charger in our bedroom at night. But, you know, and as you apply that to your kids, but do you set some of those boundaries to yourself? And do you, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
No, keep talking. Oh. You're just, I'm feeling seen right now. Keep talking.
Yeah. And, you know, it's so easy to protect them. But, you know, when we're not protecting ourselves, that's when we too can just go right down into those holes of comparison and looking what everyone's doing. And, you know, how do we apply what we're trying to protect them from to ourselves? Yep.
Well, and the thing is there's a saying that much more is caught than taught. And again, this is something that it is a daily struggle. I do not mind saying it is a daily struggle, and sometimes it is a multiple times per day struggle for me. So when Lily was younger, right, when my oldest was younger, I worked in public relations, but I worked kind of on a crisis communications team. So my cell phone was an appendage, right? Any time this thing buzzed, I had to check it, because what if it was work? And, you know, and that was before I learned how to differentiate ringtones and do all that fun stuff. But I'll never forget laying down with Lily, and it's like, you know, our bedtime routine, and it's story time, and my phone starts to buzz. And I was not on call that night, so I'm like ignoring it. And she's like, "Mommy, your phone's going off." And I'm like, "I know, but it can wait." "No, Mommy, it might be important." "No, but it can wait." No, Mommy. And then she goes and grabs my phone, because she couldn't handle not having confirmation that this was not important. And so that is the moment that my phone went to silent. So like for 8 years, I have not had the ringer on my phone unless I'm expecting something, some kind of urgent call. It's always on silent. Now, there's an upside and a downside to that too. Because it's always on silent, I do have to check it more, because I'm not going to hear it. I'm not going to buzz, but I choose when I check it. And there are times that I'm just like, you know what? When we go on vacation, or even if we take like a day trip with the family, I pull like all notifications off of my phone. There's times I know myself, and I know that, okay, we're going to go to the beach. Like, I am not a beachy person. It's just not my thing. It's going to be very hard for me to be present during a beach day with my family. So I let my battery die. You know what? My husband's always going to have a cell phone on him. It's going to be fine. You know, I'll put a charger in my purse if I need to charge my phone for some reason. I just let my battery die.
And there's a freedom to that.
Well, and the freedom is because I know myself well enough to know that if I'm going to have a hard time engaging in what's present with me, because it's not maybe my favorite thing to do, I'm going to default to my phone, to social media, because that's my comfort zone. That's my work life. I'm good at my job, right? Yes. I think that's the other thing with us as moms. We know what we're good at, And so we have to be mindful of the things that we feel like we're not good at and how we distract ourselves from that. And so I know, right, that there's certain things I'm not good at, but they're important to my family. And so I have to set up my own guardrails.
I like
You know,
that.
and you talked about plugging, you know, charging phones in your bedroom. You know, sometimes my phone has to go in a drawer. Sometimes I put my husband's phone in a drawer because I'm like, I know you love us. I know you want to pay attention to us, but I also know that the phone's just easy, right? It's easy to just scroll through. So everybody's phone goes in a drawer, and we have a real live conversation.
Yeah. I like how you mentioned that you're not a beachy person, so you had to make a conscious effort to be present. And I know looking back, I missed out. I didn't have social media when I was raising my kids. Thank you, Jesus, for that. I know looking back though, I missed out on really enjoying some of the moments with my kids because I believe that I had to make the moment better. I had to be like some of the other moms I saw or heard were doing these things. And I'm not good at baking. Or I should say, you know, I don't enjoy baking.
Right.
If I enjoyed it, I'd be good. But I don't enjoy baking. And I would always see these moms come in the classroom for their kids' birthdays, and they had these amazing homemade goodies. And I would just, you know, feel so bad about myself as a mom, and I wasn't doing this or whatever. I couldn't just enjoy the store-bought I brought and be present in my kids' classroom for their birthday, because that's all they remember. Because I believed I had flunked. I believed that I had been, you know, she was mommy hero and I was mom zero.
Yep.
And you know, like you said, you had to put some of that social media away to enjoy the present and enjoy what is actually going on. And so why do you think that we put so much pressure on ourselves to be these kind of parents that we see on social media when our kids and our family are just happy to have us there?
Well, let's start off with, you know, we call that mom guilt, right? And it's funny is I had all these opinions about mom guilt, you know, before I became a mom, because we all know so much more before we're actually parents than we'll ever know after we become parents. But I remember being pregnant and just having this pang of guilt that I had never had before, and turning to my husband and going, mom guilt is 100% self-imposed. You know, I'd been surrounded by women who talked about how their kids made them feel guilty. And I was like, no, I feel so guilty right now about this one thing. And the baby isn't even born yet. And that was, to me, I mean, that was a gift from God to have that realization at that point, because, you know, I had a conversation, and, you know, I have very open conversations with my children. I believe that, you know, shame and fear are strongest when we don't speak of them. And so we talk a lot about our big feelings. And so I was talking with Lily, and I was just like, I said something, and I said, am I doing okay with you right now? Because, you know, like, she had zero confidence in my ability to homeschool, zero confidence. And so I check in with her, right? And she's like, yeah, you're fine. Why? I said, well, because, you know, I feel like I'm like the world's worst mother at least 4 times a day. And she was like, yeah, but you're actually like the world's best mother. And I'm like, really? How so? And she's, you know, and her needs are so basic. She's like, well, you love me, you feed me. I like my personal space, but when I want to cuddle, you give me a cuddle. And she's like, and you don't hit me. And I'm like, all right, so that's a pretty low bar there. It's a pretty low bar for success. But again, right, I think part of it is we look on social media, and I'm the same way. Do I do cool things with my kids? Sometimes. Do I take pictures of it? Almost never, because it's hard enough for me to do the cool thing. You cannot expect me to juggle that and my cell phone at the same time. It's just not possible. So I look at these things and I go, wow, you know, I wish I was the mom that took my kids on the nature walk and thought to save all the leaves and then make some decoupage tabletop for grandma for Christmas. But that's not who I am. I'm the mom who barely remembers to get pictures taken and the 5x7 that fits in the frame that we got grandma 2 years ago, right? But I think we look, and I think we all wish we could be better than we were. I think we all compare other people's outsides to our insides. This is something that I know you've spoken to before, right? That I don't get to sit here and wish I had your Facebook feed. If I wanted your Facebook feed, I also have to be willing to take your offline life, right? If I want the life that Sherry Fletcher shows me online, I have to take all the stuff offline that makes that online life possible. And I don't always want all of that, right?
No.
And so I think there's that. I think there's also, in my experience, motherhood has been the nastiest competitive sport I've ever participated in. And I think it's because a lot of us don't realize that we don't have to play the game. And I think most moms don't mean to make other moms feel badly.
No.
I think we're just all trying to show that we're doing the best we can. And when we have a gift or there's something that we feel particularly confident about, yeah, we shout it from the rooftops. Yeah, we're proud. That doesn't mean that I'm trying to tell you you're a terrible person because you don't do things the same way.
Yeah.
Like, I cook. I love to cook. I love to bake. I'm not great at it. I'm just like, it's years of practice that makes me pretty much okay. But people have this perception that I spend 4 hours a day in the kitchen because I post a lot of pictures about food. We like to eat in this house. But, you know, other people post a ton of pictures about crafts. And I'm always like, yeah, I got nothing there. Sorry. Yeah, no. My kids have an ornament like due tomorrow for a craft project. Haven't even started on it yet. Probably should get to that.
I love that. I was that way. I'm still that way. So as we close up, I want to bring up a topic that you and I discussed in our live. And I love what you say. These are your monkeys. This is your circus. I say you are not just a stay-at-home mom, just a career mom, just a anything. And many of us apply the just a. I like to say that you're just the. Because when you take just and take it from nothing more than to just exactly what I need, you go from just a to just the. And you go from just the mom, just the grandparent, just the teacher, just the guardian that God needs for your child or children that he placed in your care today. You are just the ringleader for the monkeys in your circus.
Amen.
And if God had needed you to be the world's best baker, then that's what you would be. If he needed you to be the Martha Stewart, then that's who you would be. But God created you to be just the mom that you are, because the kids that he gave you in your care, whether they're yours or extended family, nieces, nephews, you're a guardian, God put those kids in your life because you were just the person he needed. So what words of encouragement can you leave the listeners to help them raise their grade as a parent and still be able to enjoy social media and not do the comparison?
Well, I think the first thing, I hate telling people what they should do, right? Because it's all relative and I'm not the boss of you, even if you want me to boss you around, because people do. But I would say, the first thing is when you're looking at social media, when you find yourself comparing, I would encourage you to dig deep and figure out where that's coming from. Is what you're seeing, is that really something you wish you were doing? Like, you wish you knew how to do it, you wish you could do it, you wish you had the time to do it. And if the answer is yes, like, I really wish I was, I don't know, drawing in the sand with my kids at the beach. Ask yourself why you're not. When did you decide that that's not something you can do? And then make it happen. Rather than living vicariously through other people's social media feeds, see what you can do to incorporate the things that you truly want into your real life. What I hear a lot, I put my kids in a cooking camp. It was an online cooking camp. I hear from moms all the time, oh, I wish I could do that. Because I share a lot about how independent it's made my kids in the kitchen. And it's kind of awesome when they make you breakfast. And they're like, I wish I could do that. It's like, well, but you could. I mean, like, the camp was free. I'll tell you when the next one is. And, and then we have this conversation and we dig into, well, I can't handle that my kids make a mess. Okay, well, that's a totally different thing. It's one thing to say, I wish that my kids could cook their own breakfast. It's another thing to say, I want my kids to cook their own breakfast and I'm willing to deal with the mess that comes as a result. It's okay if you're the kind of mom that can't handle a mess in your kitchen. I get it. You do not need one more thing to clean up. It does not make you a bad mom to say, you know what? I don't want to scrub pancake batter up off the floor. But it also doesn't make you a bad mom that your kid at 10 years old doesn't make pancakes. It's a choice. And I think as hard as it is, we have to remind ourselves we have choices. And just because the choice you make is different than the choice I make does not make you a bad person. It just makes you different than me. And I'm okay being your friend if you're different than me. So don't put in your mind that I'm judging you because you're different than me. I think that's what happens. We compare and then we go, oh, she probably thinks this of me. She probably thinks that of me. When in reality, we are all just working so hard to live our own lives. We have no time or energy to think about how other people are living theirs.
Exactly. And I love how your daughter graded you as a parent by the snuggles.
Yeah.
By the snuggles.
Cuddles, that's all we care about here.
Cuddles. That's all you care about. And the rest doesn't need to be on the comparison scale. It just doesn't need to be there. So thank you so much for joining me in season 2 and being on my podcast and blessing my listeners. And every way that people can want to find you and get in touch with you is going to be in the show notes. And I just want to wish you a wonderful new year.
Oh, thank you so much. You too, Sherry. This has been fun. And to your listeners, I'm just grateful that they're here. And you know what? Here's what I'm going to say. And I know that you didn't ask me to say this, but the fact that your listeners are here, I don't think is an accident. And I think is proof to how important this message is for families, for moms. We need more encouragement. And I'm just glad a show like this exists that can help open our eyes to that.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
I hope that today's message with Tonya Kubo reminded you that God created you and He equips you to be the mother He needs for the kids He's placed in your life. I liked Tonya's challenge that when we find ourselves comparing our mothering to what others are doing, look deeper into what we are really comparing ourselves to. The previous talk that I had with Tonya and the links to connect with her will be in the show notes. If you have not subscribed already to Your Spiritual Game Plan podcast, please do so at this moment so you do not miss up and coming episodes. When you leave a rating and an honest review, that helps me serve you better as well as helps others find the podcast. During today's episode, did a friend come to mind who you know would be blessed with today's message? If so, be sure to share the link with them. Listeners like you sharing links with their friends is how this podcast can reach more people. Be sure to subscribe to my mailing list to receive weekly updates, exclusive content, and new episodes delivered right to your inbox. Thank you so much for tuning in to Your Spiritual Game Plan, the podcast that helps you understand that God's got a plan and you have a purpose in it.